Hello, friends. I hope you're doing well. Hello, hello. I'm not sure if it's recording yet, but here we go. I think it is. Here we go. Okay, Chelsea Colley here, empowerment specialist, speaker, and author. I wanted to knock out another recording and go ahead and do part 3 for the reading of Kid by the Side of the Road. So we talked about the JFK assassination. We talked about Abraham Lincoln and greenbacks and assassination. We talked about 9/11, and we talked about the Titanic. So we're going to pick up here on the Titanic. On page 10, I believe. Let's see here. Okay. Here we go. This should be interesting. So here we are on page 10. At that time in 1911, America had just experienced a huge financial crisis that even involved government offices having to close because they could not pay their bills. Okay, sorry. The US was stretched then from war in the Philippines and other things, so they weren't getting the job done. And 2 years earlier, in April 1910, 7 of the richest men in the world, cumulatively, the single wealthiest group of people in the world at that time, had gotten together to map out a plot at a place called Jekyll Island, one of the Golden Isle Barrier Islands off the coast of Georgia. In order to reach their goal of creating a new private central bank that would again siphon money from American labor, they analyzed who and what was in opposition and how they had to go about eliminating those challenges that were standing in the way of these 7 wealthy men controlling our money creation. They would do whatever was needed to get into a position to earn future interest from us. Just as Richmond had tried to set up for our country in the past, before those other central banks were kicked out for being an unneeded service, the end result of that Jekyll Island meeting was this planned event on the North Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so remember, this is the Jekyll Island meeting, which is in 1911. So they're saying at this meeting in 1911, these 7 richest men, which was the richest gathering of men in the world at the time, the end result of that Jekyll Island meeting was this planned event on the North Atlantic Ocean. Their time on that island was just an interim planning session to make sure they had all the jots and tittles in the right place, leading up to their planned vote in the 1913 US Congress, where they took control of our money when few were paying attention on Christmas Eve of that year. Of course, the number of yes votes needed for the majority at a special holiday session like that, with the right payoffs, guaranteed their desired result. I'm trying to see if it says when the Titanic went down. Oh, the sinking of the Titanic was April 14th, 1912. So yeah, in 1911, at that time, they had the Jekyll Island meeting. This was shortly after being stretched thin from a war in the Philippines. And then The next year, April 14th, 1912, was the sinking of the Titanic. And then in 1913, there was the planned vote in the US Congress. And that is when they started the Federal Reserve. They took control of our money, and few were paying attention on Christmas Eve of that year. Of course, the number of yes votes needed for the majority at a special holiday session like that, with the right payoffs, guaranteed their desired result. The winter solstice, which we now celebrate as the Christmas season, in Roman times was celebrated with an event called Saturnalia Festival. I wrote extensively about that in a previous article. This detail is relevant here because Saturn's temple in Rome was the place where Roman coinage was minted. For these wizards, there's a symbology in capturing the authority to manufacture and control the minting of money in America at the precise time of the Roman Saturnalia festival. See, The King of Misrule and His Princes, which is a book. I'm going to read that paragraph again because it's just so complicated. So talking about the US Congress vote in 1913, where they took control of our money on Christmas Eve of that year. Of course, the number of yes votes needed for the majority, a special holiday session like that, with the right payoffs, guaranteed their desired result. The winter solstice, which we now celebrate as the Christmas season, in Roman times, was celebrated with an event called the Saturnalia Festival. I wrote extensively about that in a previous article. This detail is relevant here because Saturn's temple in Rome was the place where Roman coinage was minted. For these wizards, there is a symbology in capturing the authority to manufacture and control the minting of the money in America at the precise time of the Roman Saturnalia Festival. See The King of Misrule and His Princes. So what a Christmas present we received when we created the Federal Reserve Board, a private entity that is no more federal than Federal Express. And this is mostly foreign, an English banking cartel run primarily by the Jesuits, not the Jews, the Jesuits, would thereafter print and manage America's money supply while charging us interest for handling our money, which is just colored paper without any gold backing or even real money management assistance. That's true. They want us to pay them interest, but they don't even help us build our wealth. I mean, they're not even a bank. It is their take by this bunch of bloodline family mobsters who are European thugs, mostly out of the city of London. The Titanic was part of the White Star Line, which, by the way, is code for Sirius, the dog star, which is the brightest star in the night sky. Wasn't that Satan? Wasn't Satan the brightest star? Satan was like the brightest light. So that shipping line was owned by Morgan, JP Morgan, and the Titanic was set up as the most magnificent and unsinkable ship to ever float the oceans. Morgan was scheduled to get on the ship, making the crossing from England to the US with the other elites who would be on his boat, the richest American businessmen of that time. The plan was that they could talk during this voyage and try to come up with a solution that would eliminate these engineered banking crises that mysteriously keep happening to us. At that time, during our country's most pervious financial crisis, and while JP Morgan was head of the Morgan banking interests, which was our largest bank in America, he had personally guaranteed money to keep our government going while we worked out a solution. Even up to today, America just keeps getting buried in debt to these foreign bankers. John Jacob Astor was on board and arguably the richest single man on the planet at that time. Astor was an American who opposed the type of national bank that eventually became the Federal Reserve. The other wealthy American businessmen on the ship were Isidor Straus and Benjamin Guggenheim. Cumulatively, those three represented the largest single block of wealth in our country, and each man was solidly opposed to this European orchestrated central bank. They were all going to be on board the Titanic with JP Morgan to talk these things over and try leaving the ship with an acceptable solution that could be pushed politically and brought to pass, eliminating our monetary and government payment, servicing the debt crises. Government employees having to stay home with no paycheck was not acceptable. So as these wealthy Americans and all the other passengers got onto that enormous ship in London, JP Morgan's bags, his servants, and everything he would need for the trip had been brought to the boat, and much of it was visibly loaded. Inexplicably, his most valuable possessions, including rare paintings, were held back at the last moment. Reportedly, Morgan was ready to board and everyone was anxiously awaiting his arrival. Being a bit of a diva, Morgan was expected to arrive at the last minute because he was such an important person. Suddenly, with very short notice and a few on the boat even realizing what had happened, JP Morgan apparently had other things come up, and he could not depart with the other prominent men for these crucial meetings. Morgan stayed behind. After the boat had left the dock, those in the first class section were shocked to find out he wasn't even on the boat. But still, the huge vessel continued on its voyage anyway. They had no clue about their situation being on a death ship. And the crew steamed ahead with the reality that these famous and celebrated men had been baited onto that boat. That ship was always intended to attract them into this gilded cage that would be taken to the North Atlantic and sunk in a ritual that was designed to secure these foreign bankers' position of control over America. Y'all, they sunk the whole Titanic for 3 men. They sunk the whole Titanic to kill John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. May they rest in peace. The Titanic was sailing at full speed when it crashed into the iceberg. One interesting feature of that ship was a very small rudder, making it impossible to turn as quickly as it would have been intended. All it needed was heading information that steered the boat right to that iceberg. And according to many, if the ice hadn't taken it out, the submarine was available in the area to give the Titanic the coup de grace, which turned out to be unnecessary. You mean to tell me they hit it in an iceberg on purpose, and then if the iceberg didn't get it enough, they had a submarine ready to go ahead and rip a hole to make it worse if it wasn't bad enough? They're saying they had a submarine that was available in the area, which turned out to be unnecessary. That's so effed up. That's so messed up. Here's an unknown aspect of that ship sitting on the bottom of the ocean right now. It's not the Titanic. Wow. That is not even the ship you think. Instead, it is the Titanic's sister ship, her twin, the Olympic. Fantastic research has been done by multiple people who have meticulously documented this, including photos showing the Titanic was swapped with the Olympic while they were parked beside each other in a dry dock. Why would they do that? Well, the Olympic was the first of two ships to be built, making it more advanced in its construction timetable. And during the testing phase, the Olympic hit a British military ship coming out through a clearing as it left the harbor. That collision put a gash the length of a football field on the star side of Olympic's forward bow. This Titanic sister was taken to a shipyard and repaired, but the work done wasn't using the highest quality steel. In fact, they used cheap pig iron that is much more fragile and, of course, buckles easily relative to the steel that should have been used. So that pig iron on this huge gash right at the waterline made it a fragile ship. There are photographs of the ship swapping as it occurred. Not only was the Olympic substituted for the real Titanic, but of course, their badging had to be exchanged as well. From that point, you have a much more fragile Titanic, already crippled before it even left the dock. The ship was sent out across the ocean with all of those business people and other blood sacrifices to move into the takedown position at that altar. Again, this was a plot and plan by those wizards to gain control over America. Though it was a huge tragedy of lives lost, the incident looked relatively inconsequential to the financial affairs of the world on that day, because few understand the leverage those deaths had on the fate of America, even up to right now, over 100 years later. Okay, so I have a couple questions. If they were first class, if they were some of the wealthiest men in the world, the 3 wealthiest men in America, why wouldn't they have gotten on a lifeboat? Surely the first class, the billionaires of the time, would have been rescued. So I wonder, were they murdered? Were they killed on purpose? Because it's really hard to believe that John Jacob Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus said, the ship is sinking. I think I'm just going to stay here on this ship. And they're like millionaires, billionaires of their time. Just doesn't make sense. I bet they were murdered, or I bet they were trapped, locked somewhere. There was someone handling them on that ship to make sure that they did not make it out alive. And there is also rumor that the captain did not go down with the ship. So then it goes to talk about the Federal Reserve. Because a few understood the leverage those deaths have on the fate of America, even up to right now, over 100 years later. 100 years later, that was in 1913. And here we are in 2022. Can you imagine how free we would be had they never instituted that Federal Reserve in 1913? It's hard to even imagine, That's why they've kept all these technologies from us as well. I mean, we would be so far advanced if we hadn't gotten stuck in 1913, and then we hadn't got sabotaged in 1963, when they killed Kennedy, or even if it was in 2001, 21 years ago. 21 years ago, imagine September 11th, 2001, they take over the broadcasting, and they come on the news and they say, we just want to tell you all of your debt is forgiven. And now you can choose to borrow money interest-free. You don't have to pay income tax anymore. We're going to release 6,000 patents we've been holding back from you. Excuse me. Can you imagine how different our lives would be today? So we got to get this right, guys. We got to get this right. And that's why I think this is the real thing. I think this is really real because, you know, this whole 17 thing, you know, people say it's a psyop. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would the evil people want us to study and learn all of this and learn history and go through and do thousands of hours of research, finding out how corrupt they are? They wouldn't want that. They're all about censorship. This is the plan. This is the good plan. This is God's plan. I believe it. I mean, we've been saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen, they're going to come out, it's going to seem like communism. All of that stuff happened. Everything we said that was going to happen, happened. Everything. Even to the point of in a Cuban Missile Crisis type situation right now, today, with what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. So just realize, guys, we've never been free. We don't know what it's like to be free because we've been held captive in so many ways that we don't even know. Like, we don't legally have to pay tax according to our Constitution. Everything they're doing is illegal. Everything they've done this whole time is illegal. Our money is illegal. Our money is debt. Not just our money is debt, but the interest on the money. We've been paying the Federal Reserve for 107 years. No, because 1913. So 2013. That's a lot of years. We've been paying all of this interest this whole time. And I don't know what the debt started with, but Kennedy was going to put forth $4 trillion of the silver-backed currency, and that would have been fine. That would have taken care of us. It would have eliminated all the debt, and that would be worth trillions and trillions. And now, you know, 4 trillion back in 63, how much would that be worth today? And we would all be, our country would be rich. All the people would have money. But no, instead of now, 109 years later, here we are with $30 trillion in debt. 30 trillion. And that's just that's just interest. That is all interest on money that never existed in the first place. There is no assets to back this up. They are literally calling us chattel. We are assets of our government. That is what's on the paperwork. So they were able to borrow money by selling out their citizens. Very, very concerning. And the more you know, the more everything makes sense. I mean, the more you know, the more you have, the more you learn you need to know. I think that's true. You know, it's like the more you, what is it? The more you know, I can't think of it. I have these like things where I can't remember. The more you know, the more you learn how much more you need to know. There you go. Something like that. But let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if this is frustrating or if this is disheartening for you. I mean, this is stuff that we already know. I mean, we already kind of knew this stuff, but to go forward or to go back and just lay it all out like this, just to think of how we've been duped on so many levels and been lied to on so many levels. It's a shame. A shame, shame, shame that it's not just, an evil central banking system. It's not that. It's not just an evil banking system. It's a corrupt judicial, executive, legislative, federal, statewide, county, like local school boards pushing this control on the people. And that's not what God wanted for us. We were supposed to have freedom. We are supposed to have freedom. We are supposed to be able to walk and own the land that we were given. Not have to pay for the air that we breathe and the food that we eat. So I hope we have a world someday in our future where we don't have to pay just to live, because this was rightfully given to us by God. So stay strong, hold the line, and comment below. Let me know your thoughts and tell me where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to connect with me on chelseacollie360.com if you want to connect with me on my social media and check out all my links. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.